Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of The Followers. We have a very special guest today. We have Mr. Robbie Cannon has joined us to talk to us. So Robbie Cannon is a golf-specific S&C. So as well as being a great golfer in his own right, he works with some of the top professionals in the world on how to get their strength and conditioning up to scratch. So you're very welcome, Robbie. I might just get you to do a quick overview of yourself before we get started.
Thanks for that introduction. Yeah, as you said, I do work with a lot of golfers. That would probably be how I'm probably well known in that field. The last kind of 3 4 years, I've also worked in intercounty football as well, so which has been brilliant. Um, but yeah, I guess I got into kind of S&C from my own experience, basically. When I was a decent amateur, but it wasn't until I started kind of looking into the physical side, because I did have a couple of physical restrictions that I never really knew about. And then when I went for a golf lesson with a new coach, and he kind of explained these things to me, put me through a screening process, found a couple of issues, restrictions that I had to work on, went away, worked on them, came back. Then my golf swing technically changed without me actually making any technical changes. And I went on and had a great season that year, won the South of Ireland, played for Ireland, which was kind of lifetime ambition in the amateur ranks. And that kind of led to me investigating more. And I went and I started off doing I think it was a diploma first in strength and conditioning, went on to my degree, and went on done a master's, obviously a lot more certifications, some good, some bad, and that's basically the long and short of it.
Perfect. So you mentioned there that you're a fairly good golfer in your own right. So you've won some of the top amateur competitions in the country. Was there ever kind of an ambition there to go pro, or was it always I like golf's a passion, but my kind of goal is always to be a coacher in that level, or is it a bit of both?
I guess when I was younger, maybe like late teens, I probably had ambitions to be a professional golfer, um, and then had a little bit of success early on. My played for Leinster quite consistently. Started working, and I kind of knew at that stage I wasn't going to make it as a pro. Started working, didn't play a whole lot for a few years. Then got back into it. Had a bit more of a settled job, and it allowed me to play a bit more golf, and started to get pretty good again. Played for Leinster a couple of times, challenged in a few championships. But around that time, I was quite fortunate as well. I played a lot of golf with Shane, with Rory, and I seen how good they were, and that just
Humbling, I'd
that
say.
kind of, yeah. Even though like I was doing pretty well, they kind of just showed you how good you really had to be. Like they were just so far ahead, and still to this day, like they're the best two guys I've ever played with. But it was probably good for me because it kind of just I was never going to be as good as them. For several reasons. Obviously, they're two of the best players in the world. Um, but yeah, it was good in some ways in that regard, but also it kind of did drive you on to improve. And as I said, I've kind of had later success in my life with golf. I won the South. I just had won a couple other Irish amateurs and stuff in my 30s. So that basically explains that.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, cool. Then we'll move on to the S and C side of things, I suppose, a bit. So golf S and C has kind of exploded in the last couple of years. But what would you say kind of characterizes golf S and C as opposed to maybe the on pitch S and C that everyone would kind of familiarize when you think strength and conditioning, the kind of on pitch stuff versus what actually involves in golf specific S and C, not necessarily through the pro ranks, but just in general.
Yeah, so like obviously you should be trying to train for your sport. So if you're running around doing 5Ks every day, or sprinting every day, like that's really not really what you're doing in golf. Sure, it's good for your fitness, good for power, good for speed. If you're doing the sprints, and obviously if you're doing longer distances, good for your aerobic fitness, good for your overall fitness. But really, if you're trying to maximize your time in this busy world, you should be trying to train for your sport. And golf is a rotational sport, and you really should be training to maximize that. Um, Basically, when I'm training people, I start off with an assessment, and just to see how they move, have a look at their golf swing, um, find out any restrictions, any power leaks, anything like that, and then you just design a program from there. So in some ways, it's quite similar to train a lot of different athletes, a lot of individual athletes. But as I said, on the other side, you really are being specific to the sport that you're actually playing. And the most common things that I see with people when I test them is there's a lack of range of motion in either thoracic spine or hips. They're probably the two areas that can be quite tight. And maximizing the range of motion there is important to really getting as much power in your golf swing, because if you are quite tight, you're gonna be quite limited in your ability to rotate. So it's same as any other sport, really, like same as rowing or tennis or cricket or anything that is quite individual. You just got to be really specific for it.
I suppose it's probably something you have to factor in so consciously, because you probably know yourself. I definitely know a little bit more, but the slightest kind of change in your golf swing can mean a big difference in kind of your ball striking. So I suppose it's obviously like strengthening hypertrophy is such a big talking point at the moment with like the likes of Bryson, but it really has to be weighed up against potential loss in mobility or potential in changing kind of swing dynamics, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think people have misunderstood the whole Bryson phenomenon. Actually, I was chatting to him in the gym in Saudi Arabia a few weeks ago, and he's actually trying to lean up now. So he's on a calorie deficit, and I knew from the start the whole process of him putting on loads of weight wasn't to hit the golf ball further. He was just trying to get strong to withstand the kind of like what the he's putting a lot of pressure on his body. There's a lot of force being put on his body, and he was just trying to get as strong as possible so he could actually handle that. But I think a lot of people kind of misunderstood. He was putting on all that weight just to put on mass to obviously try and increase more force and speed. That wasn't the case. He actually got most of his speed from technical change in the swing. Like the swing is completely different. He's swinging a lot faster. There's a lot more moving parts in it. And that was the reason why he's wanted to get stronger, so he'd be a little bit more robust.
Yeah, because I actually watched, you probably saw it yourself, but there was a video on YouTube of him doing a training session with kind of a golf influencer. But it was a lot of kind of machine work and a lot of rotational work, a lot of cable work. Whereas I suppose it shocked me because I thought it was going to be a lot of kind of power type movements. But he really just, like, he does seem to have a much more calculated view of it. It's not just bro science view of kind of get as big as you can and hit it as far as you can.
Yeah, he's just basically trying to get. So he believes in the MAT, the MAT, and his trainer, his physical therapist, like they're just trying to strengthen the end of range. That's the whole philosophy, because they're trying to get the golf swing and joints and muscles to as much end of range as possible, because that's where they feel they're going to really get extra speed, extra power, really maximizing that stress shortening cycle. So that's why he's training. He's trying to get as strong as he can in that end range. I didn't see that video that you're talking about, but looking at him in Saudi, he didn't do a whole lot in Saudi, but yeah, it looked like he was doing a lot of cable and really getting to as end of range as possible. But like training at a tournament week is different than training at an off week, so he might have just been doing a very light session.
Okay, so when you would, I suppose when you're working with not normal, but like kind of non-tour pros, your everyday kind of golfer, is there any movements that you would see as kind of, I suppose, your big rocks or things that are non-negotiable but you wouldn't include in a program? Or is it, I suppose, everyone's a little bit different and it's more swing specific?
Yeah, it depends on what level or how many years they have in their training age as well. Like if somebody is a complete beginner and they haven't lifted a weight in their life, they haven't done any exercise. It all depends on that kind of first assessment. I know like assessments and FMS and stuff like that do get a hard time, especially recently last couple of years. But they're very valuable. Like they're not going to do any harm, and I can never understand why people keep on slating them. Like they're not going to hurt anyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
they don't take like that long a time to do them. I don't really use the FMS. I kind of use my own kind of assessments that over the years I kind of took the best bits of stuff that I learned off other assessments and just put everything together that I know works, and that will maximize mine and the client's time. But again, it all depends on what level they're at. But generally, I'm looking for good range of motion, as I said earlier on, in thoracic spine and good hip internal and external rotation, and shoulder rotation, external internal, very important as well. What kind of strength they have, glutes, hamstrings, upper body push pull, all pretty basic stuff. But the big thing that I go after first initially is the range of motion, because if they don't have that, if you start adding on some strength or to a dysfunctional body, it's generally not going to work that well. So we try and mobilize people first, get them nice and loose, get them a bit more range of motion, and then you can start adding on some strength. Like some people when they start lifting weights for the first time and start putting on a bit of muscle, like it has a huge effect on their golf game. Like they'll end up putting on a lot of speed, a lot of strength, great for their confidence as well. So I think that initial first 6 to 12 weeks is probably the most exciting time for somebody when they're training, if they're a complete novice.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose it brings nearly the confidence gain that they get, and it will nearly be worth 5 or 10 yards in its own when they're just walking up to the tee and they think, right, I'm so much stronger, I'm going to hit it further, and they just do probably nothing to do with the train, just the fact that they're more confident in their own swing and just hitting it a little bit better.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like if you feel good, if you feel strong, like you're definitely going to play better. You know what I mean? You're going to feel better about yourself. You're going to feel more powerful about your swing. As a result, then you'll probably have a little bit more freer of a mind. The game of golf is such a mental game that if you are a little bit more confident out there, you just focus on what you're trying to do instead of what you're not trying to do. So if you're playing a game of golf and there's water on the right and you're feeling confident, like the water doesn't come into your head. Whereas if you're not feeling confident, you're like, oh, don't hit it in the water. You'll either hit it in the water or you'll hit it way left. So like I see golf clubs in the background there, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, gathering dust, unfortunately.
Yeah, but yeah, like getting yourself physically stronger, and there's just so many benefits for golf, but for life as well.
Yeah. And then I suppose we've talked a bit about strength, but from I suppose a conditioning and fitness point of view, do you think that is a big bearing for, I suppose, again, your standard golfer? Because there's not going to be many lads at a tour pro level who are going to be unconditioned. But even from kind of a general health point of view, because obviously golf wouldn't be kind of the most taxing of sports on paper.
Yeah, like people say that, but like I know myself, and it's something I always tell like all the elite amateurs that I work with. So obviously the last year has we haven't had a proper amateur golf season, but traditionally over the years, like the West of Ireland would be the first tournament, and like I've had clients that train all winter in the gym, and they're doing their sprint work and their speed work and powerful, and they're like absolutely in superb shape. And I always remind them, okay, when's the last time you played 18 holes? When's the last time you played 36 holes? Because the West of Ireland, you'd play 18, then the next day 18, and then if you qualify, you get through to the match play, which would be 36 in the one day. And they're always like shocked, oh sure, I should be well fit for that. But the demands of walking around the golf course for could be like 8 to 16, could be 16 to 20K for the day. Like that's quite taxing on the system. Like you like I know that myself. So I always tell people, try and get as much golf in. If you're going to a tournament, try and get as much golf in as you can walking. If you can't do that, try and get as many walks in as you can, walk the dog or whatever, because it does have an effect on the body. So even though it just goes back to the demands of the sport. So what do you have to do? You have to swing a golf club as fast and powerful as you can, but you also have to walk around for 8 to 10K for a round. And if you're playing 2 rounds in a day, you're going to be 16 to 20. So sometimes people forget about that. They think they're doing all their speed work, their tempos, and they're in the gym 4 times a week. They think they're going to be in great shape, but they're just not conditioned to walk around a golf course for that amount of distance.
Yeah, it's a big. Someone was only telling me the other day, kind of, I suppose if you have a 5-minute walk to the next tee box, if you're stepping up to take that first tee shot with a heartbeat of say 80 beats per minute, it's a big difference. And if you're stepping up with 95 to 100 beats per minute, like it's much easier to calm yourself if you're not shattered by the time you get to the tee box in the first place.
Yeah, obviously, like the heart rate, like the higher your heart rate, the more anxious you're going to be, the more under pressure you're going to be. Always go back to the story about Tiger Woods that Paul Azinger told me one day. They were playing I think they were playing Isleworth, I think, and they're in a buggy, 4 guys, 2 buggies, 2 in each buggy, and they're waiting to hit into a par 5, and you see this guy hitting putts on the green, and running up and down a hill. So we'd hit a putt, he'd jog up the hill, run back down, hit a putt. So they let a big roar, F whatever, F sake, hurry up, what are you doing? And the guy in the green puts the hand up, and they get up towards the green, and they say, "Oh shit, it's Tiger Woods." so Azinger says to him, "Oh, sorry, Tiger, didn't know it was you." And he says, by the way, what the hell are you doing? Oh yeah, I'm just trying to get my heart rate up, and then when I go hit the putt, I try and get it down as fast as I can. So he's obviously working on his breathing. He obviously understood the whole physiological response of getting his brain to getting his breathing going to reduce that heart rate. So obviously the fitter you are, the lower your heart rate, it's obviously going to be important out on that golf course as well.
Yeah, I've actually heard Butch Harmon talk about that a good few times, where he's like, Tiger just had an unbelievable ability to bring his heart rate back down whenever he needed to. So anytime there was a high pressure situation or anything like that, he would be, that's why he just looked so militant and so calm, is just he had that ability to just completely bring himself down. And that's, I suppose he's always been one of the most conditioned athletes on the course.
Yeah, and some of the best golfers of the last 10 years that you could see, like, they really optimized their breathing. One guy in particular, Jason Day, when he was the world number one and winning a major and challenging for majors, like, he always had a routine where he had like big deep breaths, really concentrating on having a longer exhale. Obviously the longer exhale, that sends a signal to your heart to actually try and slow down a little bit. But like, he hasn't played as well the last couple of years. I don't see him doing that routine anymore. So it's interesting that kind of side of it, and how important it is to really try and reduce your heart rate.
Definitely. We might actually just, I know you do work with a couple of tour pros, so I'd like to kind of touch on that side a bit, and mainly, I suppose it's such a hectic, crazy schedule. How did they, and how do you, I suppose, manage travel and kind of access to gyms and everything like that?
Yeah, one thing I've noticed over the last couple of years, obviously a lot of the tour guys now are training. You could probably count one hand out of 144 guys who are playing each week. One hand guys that aren't doing any kind of training, and the equipment and the gyms and hotels have obviously, they really upscale. I think because the world has become such more health orientated, that if there's not a gym in a hotel, people won't book it. So almost every hotel that we go to at events will have a gym, and it's just a standard gym. And a tournament week, it generally will be doing too heavy a session. So once there's a good selection of dumbbells, cable machine is great. Most hotels have a cable machine. You can get a lot of good work done. Most of the work that we tend to do are on off weeks, where you can really focus on strength and power. If there's any other things that we need to work on, but at a tournament week, you're generally just trying to maintain and keeping the body feeling very loose, keeping the energy levels quite high. So the sessions during the week of tournament wouldn't be that demanding.
So I suppose, because obviously tournament weeks can be 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks in a row, would they always be kind of mainly built on maintenance and kind of mobility stuff?
Yeah, you probably would look like there could be one tournament out of, like, generally the top guys won't play 5 or 6 in a row. They'll generally play maybe 3 or 4 in a row, max. Like, I know Shane's schedule at the minute is 7 out of 8, which is quite busy. And on one of them weeks, I'm going to be there just so we will have a pretty heavy training week that week. But you will tend to, you tend to do kind of one heavier session of the maintenance phase, and that's generally on the Monday or the Tuesday, to give sufficient recovery. So I generally aim for the guys to get 2 sessions a week if they can on a competitive week. And again, like, sometimes you might target an event that may not be like an A event in your schedule that you really focus on, and you might do a little bit more that week. So it all depends. It all depends on what time of the year as well. A lot of different factors.
So I remember there was a story going around, I think it was when Koepka, I think he might have lost on the final day, but there was kind of an issue that he was bench pressing before he went out for his final round, and he was questioned on, he was like, this is my routine, like, this is my gym routine, how it's set up. So the fact that the tournament was pushed to a Monday wasn't going to affect his routine, if that makes sense. So would that be kind of enough, or common enough, or would you think that was probably...
I'd say there's probably there could be 2 or 3 guys to go to the gym out of 144 before the round to bench press. And you probably get a good few guys who go to the gym to activate, to loosen mobility work. Like a lot of guys will do some mobility work. A lot of people will have a physical therapist with them to go through some kind of warm-ups with them, some massage, any issues that they have. But yeah, it's very, very small, very, very minute percentage who will go and bench press, especially the weight that he was bench press. But that's Brooks. He does things a little bit different to everyone else. That's probably why he's so good.
Fair. And then, so I suppose you said there that it's most important the off weeks rather than the on weeks. So as an S&C coach, would you be prioritising that you're there with Shane on his off weeks rather than kind of trying to make tournaments or trying to be there for the build-up? Because I assume he can go through the mobility stuff with his eyes closed now at this stage.
Yeah. Definitely want to maximize your time and the players' time as well. We have our best. We do most of our work on the off weeks, and that's when we do a lot of our strength and power sessions, because you have a bit more time for recovery and you're not worrying too much about being sore or being a little bit tight, because if you're sore and tight, it's going to restrict your ability to make a full turn, both in your backswing and your downswing and through the ball. So yeah, the off weeks are great. That's where you do most of the work. It's like any other sport. Like with the tip fellas last year, like I'm not going to go through a heavy gym session with them a few days before Munster final. You know what I mean? Like a week of a game, you just really deload. You're trying to keep bodies feeling fit and fresh, and just really to minimize the levels of fatigue. So it's the same as any sport. So it's important just to be fresh for the go for the first round.
Yeah. And then I suppose from an S&C point of view, would you have much of a collaboration with Shane's swing coach? Like, would you guys work very much in tandem, or is it seen as kind of two separate entities?
Yeah, so Shane wouldn't be like he wouldn't be overly technical, and I have a good relationship with his coach. His coach is also the high performance director of Golf Ireland, and so I've worked with the Golfing Union and the ILGU for 7-8 years now. So, and obviously from playing on Irish teams, I'd know Neil very well. Like, we'd be good friends. So yeah, we have a good relationship. We wouldn't overly talk about the technical side. Shane hits the ball great, never really hits the ball very badly. So but that might be different with other coaches. So other players, you obviously have a little bit more. A player could be struggling with something technically. The coach could come to me and say, is there anything that he's doing physically here? Is there anything that we can do in the gym just to maximize his ability to do this? So it's such an individual sport, golf, like, and it's the same with the coaches. Some coaches are very technical and some aren't at all. So as I said, it all depends on the player.
Cool. Would there be any kind of, I suppose, potential red flag things that you would kind of look for with a swing? I suppose when we've been working with a swing coach, if you were going to do maybe like a body overhaul, or if there was something big you were looking to redo on somebody's swing, say if you were looking to really gain upper body strength or cut down in weight significantly, would there be things you'd want to factor in with the swing coach and make sure they aren't harmed?
Yeah, I tend not to. One thing that's always been drilled into me from my mentor, Liam Hennessy, was like, in extremes lay danger. So I would not be a man to make massive, drastic changes over a short period of time, because it generally doesn't work out well. So yeah, like I always say, like, the golfer is basically like he's the captain of his own ship. You know, he basically knows what he wants to do, what he has to do. The coach will be very, very close to the player, directing him what he should do, and then the S&C should be almost like a mechanic on that ship, basically, where if there's anything that needs to be fixed or anything that needs to improve, that's where I come in. But I think overall team approach is very important. You definitely don't want the S&C coach going off on a tangent trying to put 10 kilo on a player over a 3-month spell, because that'll have a drastic change on his biomechanics.
I suppose it's kind of unique in golf as well, whereas I suppose with the tip lads, if the S&C coach wanted you to hit X marker for performance, you just hit it because they're the coach, whereas in golf, you're the coach, but you're also technically the employee, so the golfer is the client and the boss in the same thing, so it's kind of hard to measure that through.
Yeah, and some players are very self-reliant, and then some others. So it's a very, very interesting sport to be involved in. And like from playing myself, I know the different characters that you're going to have. But basically, the player should be the boss, and he should be direct, and he should. And then obviously having close relationships, like I just can't stress how important having an overall team approach. You want everyone to be on the same mindset, same kind of track. That's in kind of my experience, that's what works best.
Cool. And when we move away from the pro game a bit here, but I suppose this applies to you and to Shane, I suppose, in the same context. It's kind of multi-sport background. There's kind of a big push in all sports really, but it's always been there in golf to kind of specialise early. Do you think multi-sports background is kind of benefit? Because I know most Irish golfers anyway have always kind of had a multi-sport background. They've never really specialised too early, because I don't think it's never really been something the GUI have pushed too much. But how much of a benefit do you think comes from having that multi-sports background as opposed to maybe someone just golfing since they're 10, 12 years old?
Yeah, I guess from my experience, from people that I've seen over the years, the kind of boys and girls that have played other sports have always been better athletes. They always screen better. Boys and girls that only played one sport, unless they were doing some physical training, they don't screen that well. Their movement skills aren't that good. It takes a lot more time to get them into really good kind of movement, kind of just to really improve their movement. But the people that have played other sports are generally they pick up stuff. They really pick it up really fast. They move well. There's no real issues. That's from my experience, and I guess I think it's important that kids play other sports just as many as they can, especially in their kind of early teens. And then when they probably get 13, 14, 15, then they're going to have to make a decision. What do they enjoy the most? What are they better at? Generally, kids would pick something that they're good at. But I think they have to be able to make that decision themselves. Because I've seen over the years where a kid is kind of pushed into playing golf and he doesn't really enjoy it as much as his parents might enjoy it. He may have preferred to continue playing Gaelic football or hurling. So I think it's important that the kid is allowed to make that decision and give him as many opportunities, as many sports to play in. But it basically, the decision will make itself depending on the player's ability and the enjoyment level, as long as they're not pushed into by parents or mentors or something like that.
Yeah, and I suppose if you think about it from, a load point of view, if you're a kid and you have kind of football training on a Monday, basketball on Tuesday, and kind of the whole week, it's very hard to replicate that with just golf, especially for someone that age. You'd have to play an awful lot of golf, because I know obviously Tiger Woods is an example of someone who would have played mainly golf and only kind of specialised early, but like the volume that he would have played was just a huge amount to get that load under his belt. He would just get.
Obviously, Tiger and Rory are probably the one example of just like golf only. And obviously they're two of the best of all time. But that's like they're basically the only two. Everyone else is. You see a lot in the ladies' game where, especially the Koreans, they've just been golf, and they kind of drop off and end up like not playing for too long. They don't have the longevity. Whereas you look at the likes of Pori Carrington, who played a lot of sports when he was younger, like he's still going strong now, nearly 50. So yeah, it's like it's all about keeping people in the sport, no matter what sport it is. Whether it's golf or whether it's Gaelic football. The longer, like I found myself, like I was quite good at soccer and Gaelic football in my kind of early teens, and obviously then took up golf. But I realized pretty quick that I love golf and I was better at golf, so I just made that decision and stopped playing the other two. I was also probably too small for the other two. But the decisions they generally do work out for themselves.
From an energy demands perspective, say for competition, what kind of differences do you see in the approaches? Obviously, they're two entirely different sports, but you're dealing with golf and intercounty football. With intercounty football, your start time. Generally it's going to be 75 minutes of play. and you're going to be, get that little break in between. So you're able to kind of, plan very specifically there. But say with golf, it is a little bit more, I suppose, different there because of, the walking, the intermittent type movement of it there between power, between precision and just that long play. Do you find some golfers might struggle a little bit with trying to maybe plan for their energy demands on a day, and or how have you found the likes of Shane and his competitors to find that?
Yeah, I think obviously Shane is doing this a long time, so he pretty much knows what works for him. You're right what you're saying. It can be hard for somebody to plan out their energy intake. Some people feel if they eat too much for breakfast that they feel quite sluggish and can't swing the golf club as well as they can. Some people, if they don't eat enough for breakfast, that they get hungry out in the golf course and then they try and eat too much. So it can be, it's a little bit of trial and error, but basically people will know how many calories that they'll need or what they'll burn on the golf course. Especially on a hot day, water is probably the most important thing, like getting enough water into the body. But you'll find that the top guys, both elite, amateur and professional golfers, they'll have their routine pretty much nailed down to a T. And they'll always have some food out on the golf course as well. Again, like even seeing intercounty, some of the players, their kind of preferences for pre-match meals and times that they have it is a little bit different as well. Some people don't like to eat too close to the game. Some people like to have something quite close to the game. So it's really, everyone is so individual, and I think you start to get into trouble when you start pushing individuals to certain set times, or you have to do this. That doesn't work for me. So the coach and the backroom staff have to be quite aware of that, and just to advise and educate players on best practices, and then let them make up the decision themselves. But generally, if people are doing stuff that doesn't really make sense scientifically, they will get found out. You'll probably see a drop off in energy towards the end of the game, if that answers your question.
There's been kind of a big jump in fitness wearables or fitness trackers on the tour. Do you use them much for your own training, Robbie, or with your kind of clients, or is it
more of a fan?
Yeah, like I've it's something that's quite interesting. Tried loads of different ones over the years. I think what we do now, myself and Shane, we when we're training, we use a strap to measure kind of heart rate zones and good estimate of calories burned and stuff like that. I know you're never really going to get it 100%. And it's also great for accountability. So if I'm not with him, I can track what he's doing, and it's actually brilliant for him mentally, because he'll tell you himself, if he didn't have that strap, the high probability he wouldn't do some of the sessions. And I'm the same. Like if you're tracking your sessions and what you're burning off each month, it does really gives you great accountability. And then other straps like the Whoop strap, tried that for a while, got a lot of false readings off it. Shane was using it for a while as well. He kind of found the same. It's still very, very good. But I'm onto the latest Apple Watch now, and I found that really, really good. I think it's very, very accurate in regard to your energy output, and pretty good for sleep, and a lot of really good pieces of information on it. But I think what's going to happen, I think every kind of year just seems to get better and better, the trackables. I personally think if somebody brings out a kind of a heart strap that you can put on, and like, the one thing I don't like about the Apple Watch is that obviously it's a watch, you have to wear it all the time. The Whoop was quite good that it was a strap, and you could put it in your bicep as well. I think at some stage there's going to be a company that's going to bring out like a very small device that you can track quite close to your heart. You don't have to worry about it too much, and it'll just give you the data. I know there is some kind of wearables out there that are quite expensive and high tech that do something quite like that. But I think it's we're coming close to the day where you're going to have something that you don't even know that you're wearing, but you'll still get the information on your phone.
Yeah, I suppose the main thing with them, I suppose from my point of view, would be tracking recovery. Do you find there be much issues with tour players like Shane, considering like he could be in Dubai one week, in America the next? It must be having a consistent enough recovery and sleep schedule must be tricky enough.
Yeah, you're wearing the Whoop for recovery, are you?
I'm just to track recovery, to be honest. It's just I've had it a few months now and I'm kind of tracking it, but again, the calorie count is fairly inaccurate. Like it can be hit and miss. And to be honest, I haven't really been able to get out and push myself to the test to see if my recovery levels are there or not. But I don't really know if it's accurate to at the moment.
Yeah, I never found it that accurate for recovery. I can give you 5 or 6 examples, but I think the biggest thing about the recovery is if you're a really easygoing guy, so your personality is you're very, very mellow. Things you don't get excited about stuff. Like you're always going to have higher recoveries. Whereas if you're a fella who's your mind is always on the go and like you're quite an active fella, quite a busy fella, like you're going to struggle to get good recoveries. You know, I know from clients that have used it myself, and you put them into them categories, and it's I don't think they've really got the algorithm the way it should be.
Yeah.
And like I know of people who have had 5 or 6 glasses of wine and 5 or 6 hours of sleep, and they wake up the next day and the recovery is like 95%. And like because there's a lot of different stories from the PGA Tour. There's one golfer, actually, Charlie Hoffman. He got a red eye, I think, from San Diego. I think 3 hours sleep or something. And like he had a really high recovery, and he's like, he actually got on to Whoop and said, "What's going on here? It can't be right." So I think they are getting better with their algorithms. Like I know they changed it a few times, because when I first got it, like the calorie count I was getting close to 5,000 calories a day. When I was like, I knew my average kind of calorie count a day is like 3,250 or 3,500, depending on how busy a day I am. And then they changed the algorithm. Then the Whoop went really low, so I was telling me I was only getting 2,250, 2,500. So that was wrong. I think it's probably a little bit more accurate now, but it's just not where it needs to be. For whatever it is, €35 or €30 a month. And as well, like another point on them on the mental side. So if you're a golfer and he's wearing his Whoop, and he wakes up on Sunday morning and he's playing a tournament and he's doing quite well, and he sees he's actually getting like a 9% reading on his Whoop. Like, how does the player react to that? So on one side, you could say, okay, he needs to be a bit more aware that he needs to take things a lot easier that day. Or on the other side, the golfer could completely freak out and say, "Oh, geez, I'm not going to play well today. Look at my 9%." So you sometimes less is more, and sometimes you're better off not knowing these things. And again, depending on the type of person you are, like if you're an analytical fellow, you'd obviously prefer to have this information. But if you're not that way inclined, something like a bad reading or a bad number could actually completely throw your routine and stress you out. And that's not what the kind of mental state you want to be when you're playing. You want to play a tournament round.
Yeah, that was kind of the main concern that I had, that it would just, I suppose for such a mental game, something like that is bound to play in your mind a little bit. If you kind of say, if you're getting up, you're 2 shots clear going into the final day, and you wake up and you have whatever, a red day or a 20%, you're going to come out. That's going to affect you mentally, like regardless. Whereas if you wake up the next morning and you haven't got a wearable and you just think you had a bad sleep, you can kind of forget about that. Whereas if you have a figure for it or a quantitative thing, it kind of makes more of a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said, it's interesting. It all comes down to the individual. But I definitely think the Whoop gave me a lot of false readings. I know a lot of people that get false readings. And then you're on the other side of it, you're getting people that they're getting bad readings and they didn't want to train. Like, you didn't train for like the last 4 days. Like it's about stressing the body recover. That's how you make adaptations. If you're not doing anything for, but I'm trying to get my recovery back, but like you're a pretty active guy who thinks a lot, and you're kind of stressful person. That's probably why you're getting bad numbers. It's not because you're training. You know what I mean? So, yeah, very interesting. But I think it will get better, and I think the real gold standard will be something close to the heart. that you can wear that you don't even know you're wearing. That's probably where I see that happening in the next few years.
Yeah, I definitely like the idea of Whoop, but I think you're right. It does have a lot of work to do before it's kind of nailed it right on. I know you're high performance coach for the GUI as well, or for Golf Ireland. What exactly is included included in your role there? Like, what exactly are you working with all the age groups coming up, or would you have much actual face-to-face time with the golfers as part of?
Yeah, it's all changed at the minute. Not just with COVID, but obviously the men's and the ladies unions have joined forces into one union. So like one thing that we've done over the last year, myself and a couple other people, we put together a kind of an assessment that when we do bring in other S&Cs into the program, that this is basically the framework that we want you to kind of work off initially. And obviously the S&C can put his own kind of hallmarks or whatever kind of training that he wants to do with them once they kind of go through this initial assessment. So that's one thing that we have. That's I think we pretty much signed off on that. But going back to when I started with the GUI, I started off with the Connacht branch first of all, just some assessments and some programs, and went on to working with the national squads. And primarily, I would have worked with the under 16s, the under 18s, and the men's squads. But most of the work would have been with under 16s, under 18s, really working on trying to get them started on a long-term development plan for their training. And then with the ladies, I've worked with them for probably 7 years, and it's the same kind of long term. We had a really great coach, David Carney, who left, who finished up there quite recently, and he's seen the benefit of getting the girls on a proper plan. And we had some great success with them. Like some of the girls went from having really poor diets and not doing any training, being in pain and injured, and we just transformed a lot of them around, and they had some great years over the last 5 or 6 years, thanks to Dave, and thanks to the girls actually starting to get some proper training and proper nutritional habits into their life. So I'm very proud of my time with that. And now, as I said, it's all joined together now, and the last year has been very tricky with COVID. We've done a lot of Zoom calls. We try and have a weekly kind of Zoom kind of hit session. It's obviously not ideal, but it's better than nothing. And I have had some individual assessments with some of the guys and girls as well. But yeah, hopefully now when this is all done, we can get back and getting back to seeing people face to face and getting them on some good plans. But golf is very seasonal, and over the last kind of 10, 11 years doing this, people tend to train a lot in the winter. Comes to the summer, then they tend not to do a lot of training because they're playing tournaments. So my belief is I try and get them to train all year round, but obviously at tournament weeks you do a lot less. But there's a lot of education involved, and it's getting better every year, but still a long way to go.
And then when you're, I suppose, because it starts, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Golf Ireland would it start under 14 or under 16?
Yeah, so there's like the development squads. Like they really try and identify talent from a young age, from 12. Like there's 12s, 14s, but the national squads, we don't select national squads until under 16. There is provincial squads at under 14. But there's not really a whole lot of focus on strength and conditioning at that young age. There is a focus on fundamental movement skills for sure. But I could see the program slightly changing over the next few years, getting better as Golf Ireland continues to grow and develop, with the two unions coming together.
And then from a training point of view, I suppose you probably haven't had too much example of it now, but would the women's and the men's side train together from an S&C point of view, or are they both separately programmed for, or is that even probably hasn't happened yet, has it?
We haven't even got, well, at the moment the Zooms on a Tuesday evening. Yeah, they're all logging in and doing their session. We'll have a focus on like kind of rotational exercises and obviously strength exercise, mobility, a good bit of core. But I think what we'll see going forward is they'll obviously have different panels, and it all depends. Like at the moment, the training that we have done from a kind of golf side, the guys and girls have just trained by themselves in their own panels. So I think that will probably continue to be the same.
So, just a football note there. You obviously had massive success last year with the tip lads. Did you? I suppose, how did you manage that from a strength and conditioning perspective? Did you find that you had to learn a little bit more about your own practices and maybe your own kind of approaches and adapt in any way, like we all had to adapt in different degrees? Or I suppose, yeah, what do you feel were the big, I suppose, nuggets that kind of helped in last year's success?
Yeah, it was my first year with Tip last year. I worked with Leash for a couple of years before that. Had a good bit of success down there as well. We got 2 promotions, got to a Leinster final. And yeah, every year you learn something. Like I learned an awful lot from working with John Sugru and Leash and great bunch of guys down there. Owen Kearns, Brian Breen, great management team. And then you go on to Tip, and obviously we were going really, really well. I think probably for October, November, December, we trained. We felt like we were going pretty well. We started the league. League wasn't going great for us, and then COVID hit, and it probably came at a good time for us because gave the guys a bit of chance to actually just reset and come back with a kind of new attitude. We got a few new players that came back who were away traveling. But from an S&C standpoint, like I think I think the big difference that probably gave us was just mental. It just really reset everything from a mental side because things weren't going that great. Came back, things obviously started to get a little bit better, and we start winning games. But we tried to keep things fresh during the first kind of lockdown. So I introduced this kind of Champions League kind of running kind of campaign because people were obviously starting to lose motivation on training. And we had this obviously time trial, categorized players into very fast, mediocre, and just gave them kind of different teams and groups. And we ran that over a kind of I think it was a 5 or 6 week period. Just kept everyone interested and kept them actually able to do their training. They were still belting away under S&C programs. Some people had equipment, some people had limited equipment. So I guess coming into this lockdown, it enabled me to be a lot more prepared for getting guys equipment. And that's the one thing when we were locked down, I made sure that everyone had plenty of equipment that they could use. So everyone had a barbell, some plates, or some guys had quite heavy dumbbells. So majority of the squad now have decent amount of equipment, so they've actually been able to continue their S&C programs. People with lighter weights, we just added time under tension for them. A lot of eccentrics the last few weeks. We'll do some isometrics the next few weeks. I think we're going to be back training probably Easter Monday. I'd say is probably the date that they're going to. And I'm looking forward to seeing how much bigger and stronger these guys are going to be, because it's some of the lads definitely needed to put on a little bit of size, because they've only been in a first year of an S&C program. So this break has given a lot of guys a time to actually build up some muscle, build up some strength and power. And then some other guys, it's given them a great opportunity to build their speed, get a little bit faster. So you gotta, when life gives you lemons, you got to make lemonade. So
yeah, no, that's very interesting. From the equipment alone perspective, to kind of try and get that consistency across the team, that you're not ending up with 5 or 6 lads who are really pushing on, and then the rest are all kind of just getting fitter, but not able to put on strength and build power in that. So it's a very unique time, right? To see what kind of adaptations can be brought about.
Yeah, the first lockdown, some of the guys didn't even have like a dumbbell. You know what I mean? It was interesting. But I made sure then, like, some of the guys, unbelievable actually. Some guys spent serious amount of money on gym equipment, and incredible for them. And that they just showed so much interest that they wanted to really invest in themselves and their strength and conditioning. So it's been brilliant to see. But yeah, I think that's the one thing that I learned from the first lockdown, was to make sure that the guys had equipment for going for this latest lockdown.
Perfect. Well, I think that's about me done with questions anyway. John or Damien, do you have anything else to add?
No, that's been fascinating. That's been brilliant. Yeah.
Hopefully, I haven't bored you to tears.
No. There was a lot of very interesting takeaways there from that. Yeah, no, you'd learn a lot about. I suppose golf isn't exactly an area of strength conditioning that a lot of people, I suppose, listening would be too familiar with. So this could definitely be a great learning opportunity for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think I kind of see it on social media now. Like, a lot of people they've completely misunderstood the whole Bryson DeChambeau situation, and there's probably a lot of I guess traditional SNCs now think, okay, let's train. I can train golfers. I just want to get them big and strong, and they kind of forget that if a player starts losing range of motion in a joint, that's a negative. That's a major negative. So if I was going to summarize golf S&C, is, yeah, you can get players bigger and stronger, definitely more powerful, but it's a rotational sport, and you got to keep them mobile and flexible enough that they can actually swing the golf club properly. Because the second that you start to lose range of motion, you're in trouble. Your whole golf swing will change.
I think that was my concern with the distance report that came out. I feel if they do dial everything back, it'll be kind of the shorter hitters who suffer and will then try and build up more muscle to hit it more and just put themselves under more stress. Because realistically, if they roll the ball back, Bryson and Rory aren't going to be injured in it that much. Like, they're still the longest hitters, just because they have to use a 9-iron instead of a pitching wedge isn't really going to kill them. But if you're pushing some of the shorter lads back from a 7 to a 5-iron, they're going to have to up their game, or they're going to fall behind.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think the reason why Bryson won 2 tournaments last year, because he was the best putter that week.
Yeah, by a distance.
But what wasn't really so much about his overall game was good. Like, he obviously struggled there last night. He struggled a little bit this year so far. So it's a game. Golf is a game of skill, and I think there's probably been a little bit of a over exaggeration to what Bryson's done. So it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen. But I think if they do roll back the equipment, it's actually gonna suit the longer hitters, as you said, and it's going to make it harder for the shorter guys. I think myself, the secret is, it's actually nothing to do with the equipment. It's the golf courses. They actually need to make them trickier. Like the likes of like, you could put Bryson around Valderrama. Like, he's not going to probably break par for 4 rounds there. It's about the golf courses like that, the classics. You can actually, the tournament officials for the week, tournament director, they can make golf courses as tricky as they want, and I think that's the secret going forward. Making golf courses just that little bit trickier, that will actually reward more accuracy and skill rather than distance.
Yeah, I'd agree. Because even with Genesis last week, like, Bryson struggled there as well, and it's not even the longest of golf courses. It's just, again, if you don't hit in the right spot, or even if you don't miss in the right spot, more importantly, you're going to struggle, and I suppose that's the key to.
That's the key. That's where I see where I think it's gonna, instead of designers making golf courses longer, it's about making them tougher. That really rewards skill and not just hitting driver everywhere. So I think really good designing is that's the way I would look at it. That's really going to come to the fore.
Definitely. Anyway, so again, Robbie, that's been brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on.
Perfect.